Good afternoon, and I could say good morning too, and I could say good night. I'm chairman of the School of Christian Ministries, Bishop Trevor Williams, and we are going to be doing a course in English. This is a very interesting course, very interesting course. But before we go any farther, let us pause a prayer. Father in heaven, in the name of Jesus Christ, the resurrected Lord, I approach your holy presence. I approach you on the basis of the finished work of Jesus Christ, the risen Lord. I ask, Lord, for your guidance, your blessing, your blood coverage, your protection and preservation, your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding. And I ask the same for the participants in this course. I pray your blessings and coverage upon the systems that are engaged to make this course possible. In a precious name I pray. Amen. Praise God. Now, the course is English. And the book I'm using is called Matriculation English Course. Matriculation English Course, and it was printed in Great Britain by University Tutorial Press Limited. Printed in Great Britain. That's where it was printed, Great Britain. And I'm using this as my text. Now, you may have a different English book, but every good English book, although they might be structured differently, and you will find that they are structured differently, but they deal with the same topics. So you're going to move topic by topic. You'll go to the content page, and if I'm dealing with noun, maybe your book does not begin with nouns. It might begin with adjectives or with verbs. So you go and look for the topic that I'm dealing with. Look in your book for the topic. If you can get a copy of this book, no problem. But the books differ from country to country, and it's difficult to get one that is universal, one book. So let us look at it topically. All right, we're going to be dealing with the English language topically. Now, English, as we know it, has come down to us through the centuries. And it first, the English language was first brought to this island, that is the island of Britain. Great Britain is an island. And it is the 10th largest island. It's number 10. So I have number 1, number 2, number 3. Up to 10 is the 10th largest island, Great Britain. On Great Britain, you have 3 countries. You have England, Scotland, and Wales. England, Scotland, and Wales. So, the language was brought to the island of Great Britain in the 5th and 6th and 7th centuries during the invasion of the country by the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. These were Germanic tribes. And if you look at the German, the language German, you're going to notice that it resembles English. Even though you won't understand what is written, and you can deduce some, because some of the words, the root of the words are similar to English, because you're talking about Germanic tribes. And before they came, and sometime after they came, the Germans and these people who became known as English could communicate. But over the centuries, the languages grew apart. And so, for them to communicate now, they have to study the languages. And even now, you have different strains, if I may put it that way, of English. You have American English. You have English. You have the Queen's English. You have formal English. The English that is spoken in the Caribbean is different from the English spoken in England. And the English that is spoken in Jamaica is different from the English that is spoken in Trinidad. So they have differences. Praise God, we're able to understand one another. But there are times when an American speaks and you will have problem understanding the American or the Englishman. The reason why we tend to understand what the American is saying, it is because we are very much Americanized. But the language takes its name from the first of these tribes, which was also the most numerous and for some time the most powerful, and that's why it is English. So English language takes its name from the Angles because more of them came and they were stronger. In other words, they dominated the others. English, when first introduced into Great Britain, differed largely from the present language both in grammar and in vocabulary. At a time, and for a number of years, you find that, for example, if you read the King James Version, the old King James Version of the Bible, you're going to see thou sayest, and thou wantest, and so on. You don't, that is Old English. And the English before that was even different. And I won't have to go into the technical differences of the languages. There are some technical differences in the English language, which is not too necessary at this time. The languages which English most resembles are Dutch. So the English language resembles Dutch and German, as I said before, Norse, and some other languages of Northwest Europe. And these languages with English often grouped together and spoken of as the Teutonic or Germanic languages. Right. Because these were Germanic tribes who invaded these areas. That means the Germanic tribes also went to Norse, or they went, Norse is a language, but they went to, it could be Ireland. They also went to Holland, or Holland is one of the states of, but Dutch is a language. Netherlands, they went to the Netherlands. Dutch is one of the states of the Netherlands. They also went there. Modern French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian are developed from a common original language, the popular Latin spoken by Romans. So those languages of their roots are their derivatives or dialects of Latin, which was spoken by the Romans. These are known as the Romance languages. That's French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. They are known as the Romance languages, with classical Latin that found in Latin books written about the beginning of the Christian era, that is maybe AD 1, thereabout, coming on. They belong to the Italic group of languages. The languages spoken by the inhabitants of the whole of the British Isles in pre-English days and of some parts in modern times are grouped together as Celtic languages. So the pre-English days, and there are pockets of persons who still speak those languages. They are called the Celtic languages. Such are Welsh, Irish, or Erse, Gaelic, Manx, and so on, pre-English languages. Other groups of European languages are the Hellenic, or Greek, and the Slavonic, which is Russian. The last named group includes Russian. Among the several languages of each group, there is a considerable similarity as regards both vocabulary and grammatical structure, and there is also a resemblance in these respects, but less strong between one group and another. The groups mentioned above together with certain Asiatic languages, form a family known as the Indo-European, and the language from which they must have sprung is called the original Indo-European language. Learn the term, because as you read, as you study, you're going to come upon Indo-European. Some things are very difficult to trace and so on, but there is such a group that traveled Europe, and the groups are named by the languages to a large extent, a lot of these groups. So you have the Indo-European languages, groups mentioned above, that Slavonic, Celtic, so on. They're together with certain Asiatic mean coming from Asia, because there was a powerful group from mid-Asia. They were not Chinese, because there was a time when they dominated China and India, and they went into they dominated Eastern Europe and went as far as, well, they were even threatening Germany and France and so on. So whenever time you have this invasion of vast numbers of people, and even though they lost the control and they were driven out, they left something there. They left something, and that something would be part of the culture, the present culture and languages. Hence it is known as the Indo-European language. You can look it up. You can read up on Indo-European peoples and languages. I would love you to do that and put that in your reflection paper. Let me see a paragraph of that in your reflection paper. A few words of caution may be added. Do not imagine on the one hand that the words developed from a common original will be necessarily sounded alike, nor on the other hand that the different forms have developed in casual fashion. The English daughter and the Greek togator are developed from a common original according to certain laws recognizable in the Teutonic, again Germanic, and Hellenic, this Greek, groups respectively, and so on. We won't have to go through all of that. Latin influence has been specifically widespread. The chief periods of borrowing are as follows. Our early English forefathers borrowed a few Latin words from the Roman garrisons in their original homes on the continent, and when they settled in this island from the British, who had to a large extent learned Latin. Like mile, street, port are all loan words of these periods. But they are English words now, but originally they were not. They came from other languages. Languages do influence languages. And the chief factor that gives birth to a new language is a vast movement of people. Say, for example, 2,000 or 3,000 of us were to settle one place in China or India where English is not spoken. Soon you're going to find a new language emerging. Some English, some Chinese, some English, some Indian. Wherever we go, you're going to find a new language is going to come up. And for a time, people will scoff at it because we are going to have difficulty learning Chinese. We're going to have difficulty learning the language of the country to which we are put. And then we're not going to call some of the words properly, we're not going to spell some properly. And over time, just like patois, people who study languages, philologists and linguists, listen to the patois language spoken here in Jamaica, and they know that the languages, the patois language has come from languages spoken on the west coast of Africa, and Spanish and English. And some words in the patois language and even in the English language came from the Carib, like barbecue. Barbecue is Carib. And so, but languages are like that. But listen, when you know your language, when you're able to express yourself in a language, you're confident. And that is what I want for us. I want people who are on this program to so develop their confidence, to so learn the language that they can speak with confidence. People can appreciate what they are saying. And let me tell you this, don't allow anyone to fool you. God desires competence. The Bible says so. 2 Timothy 2, verse 15. Study to show yourself competent. A workman who needs not to be ashamed. You must be able to develop yourself eloquently and well. And for you to do so, you need to have a good grasp of the English language. There are certain things that all the students here will need to do. There are some things that you will need to do if you're going to grasp the language. One, begin to practice to speak properly. You'll make mistakes, but don't worry. Intelligent people will correct you. They will not laugh at you. And even if some laugh, some immature people laugh, don't worry. When I was learning English in college, because that's where I learned it, I didn't learn it in high school. So it's one of the long story. I had to endure a lot of mockery and ridicule and laughter. Some corrected me, some laughed and then apologized. But be strong. So you have to begin to speak properly. Try. Discipline yourself. You know patois language already. You know the patois. And there's a difference between the patois language spoken in Jamaica and broken English. They're not the same. You will be speaking English, but some of the grammar is not correct. Is the grammar not correct? That is what they call broken English. All right. Is it better your English is broken than you know the patois language already. Don't go back to that. You're learning English now. We are going to be doing exercises. Exercises. Do every exercise. I'll say to the exercise, you're going to do it, and you're going to email me. And I'll correct it and send it back to you. And you're going to, if you need to improve on it, you'll improve on it. If you don't need to improve on it, I say go on to the other exercise. But you're going to do everything I tell you to do. You're going to read, depending on the size, novel. Novels are important to read. I don't mean those that are rude and vulgar. But novels, get good, clean novels. Grace Livingston, there are good Latin books there. They don't have to be, the authors don't have to be Christian. But read. You're going to have to read. The Gleaner, anything you get to read. Just read the Gleaner. Read just about everything. You're doing two things when you read. You're getting knowledge, information, and you're looking at how the words are used. When you read, look at the way words are used. So you're going to be reading. And you're going to read, you're going to give me a reflection of everything you read. For example, if you read of a small novel for the week, you're going to write a reflection paper on it. You're going to tell me what the story is about. Just write and tell me what the story is about. I must get that from you. If it is a big novel and you've managed to do 2 or 3 chapters, you're going to tell me the story of the 2 chapters. You must be able to read more than 1 chapter for the week because you have to read. Reading builds your vocabulary, and reading also gives you knowledge. Okay. So you're going to do a lot of reading and a lot of writing. Writing helps to develop the language in you because you express yourself a certain way. You learn to construct your sentences and express the ideas you have in your head. You express them. It is important that you're able to express yourself well. You must get a good dictionary. If you have access to the internet, well, you can use the internet to look up the words. Every word that you read, you do not know, write it down and look it up and look at how it is used. Write down every word you hear from me, you hear on the radio, you hear on television. Don't think that everything on the television is correct, all right? But you write them down if you don't understand them. Listen to people who know the English language, who speak well, speak properly. Listen to people like those. Listen to people like those. Then they express themselves well. They have a good grasp of the English language. You have to do what I'm telling you if you're going to do well, else you will not do well. On the introduction of Christianity in the 6th century, Latin words connected with religion were introduced, many of them ultimately of Greek origin, and with the advance of civilization and culture, the field of borrowing was widened. That means languages started to borrow from other languages. And when I say languages, I mean, the experts of languages. Examples are alto, creed, non, peer, inch, crisp, thrive. These are borrowed words from Latin. In the beginning of the 6th century, a great revival took place in England in learning, in literature, and in the arts and sciences, and we have been borrowing words from book Latin to express our ideas on these subjects ever since that time, as operate, inductive, horticulture, permutation. These are borrowed words, but they're English words now, but they're borrowed. French influence also has been felt chiefly at 3 periods in the life of the English language. After the Norman conquest, Normandy, a large number of words were borrowed from the Normans, who spoke a dialect of French. It was a dialect of French. These words deal chiefly with the law, the church, the chase, chivalry, and war. Examples are attorney, assize, saint, relic, leveret, venison, feudal, vassal, helmet, visor. These words were borrowed from about the year 1250 till 1450, when we lost all our French possessions. The influence of the French of Paris was strong in our language and literature, and many more French words were borrowed, among them being conservative, oracle, demure, influence. You look at that. From 1660, when French influence at the court of Charles II, King Charles, again became strong, down to our time, words have been continually borrowed from French, such as campaign, partir, memoir, prestige. These are just examples, there are many more. Greek did not begin to influence our language directly until the last century. Earlier borrowings were made through the medium of Latin and French, as anthem, Clark, and it is spelled C-L-E-R-K, but it's pronounced Clark, dish, blame, frenzy, ink. In modern times, many scientific terms have been taken or made up direct from ancient Greek, as epilepsy, psychology, telegram, and so on. So the English language is rich in the languages of different cultures. Besides these widespread influences, We have borrowed a few isolated words from almost every recognized language, whether belonging to the Indo-European family of languages. So the Indo-European family of languages is not one language, a number of languages are not. These words have been borrowed through various channels, the chief being trade, so alpaca, and that is Peruvian; tomato, that is Mexican; yam, that is West African; bamboo, Malay; dollar, which is Dutch; exploration, moccasin. Well, some comes from because of exploration, such as moccasin, that's North America. No doubt that's coming from Indian. Kangaroo, which is from Australian or Australia. It is Australian, the word. Pampa, South America. Some comes from war. Beleaguer, Sulter, these are Dutch. Crawl, trek, Dutch in South Africa, Dutch in South Africa. Some come through navigation. Deck, yacht, and those are Dutch. Argosy, which is Italian, and then come through literature. Tanza, that's Italian. Jubilee, Seraph, those are Hebrew. The arts, sonata, palette, these are Italian. Science, algebra, cipher, these are Arabic. And Lot, German, and so on. The list goes on. It's a long list. And these words are in the English language spoken as acceptable English words today. But when you do the etymology, there's such a word, you can look it up. I'm not going to explain it. Etymology. When you do study the etymology of the word, you'll see that it is coming from way back and so on. It's very important to study etymology. You have philology, that has to do with the study of languages. Philology, the study of languages. And you have philologists. These are the people who study philology, the study of languages. And to see, philology is very important. There is what is known as and we are going to see it in world history and church history. What is known as the Constantine donation. The Roman Catholic Church had a particular document written and with the forged signature of Constantine, a former emperor of Rome, which purported that a large tract of good lands in Italy was donated to the church by that emperor Constantine, which would mean that they were not to pay tax and so on and so on and so on and so on. Large tract. And they had a document. Now there was this guy, his name has slipped me just now, but his name will come back soon, who was a philologist. And he looked at the document, or copies of it, and because he was a philologist, he realized that the document, it could not be true, because the language in which that was written was a modern language, modern Italian. That language was not spoken in the days of Constantine, because languages do grow. And some words become archaic. Again, look up that word. Archaic. 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 Some words become archaic. And the structure of languages and so on. Some words, 200 words that we speak now in English, there are some of them that did not exist 200 years ago. So a philologist would look at something written and say, but this could not have been written in that time. You claim that this was given by Constantine, and he lived 400 years ago. This document was written in our time. So I found out that the church, the Pope, was lying, and the church was guilty of robbery. He exposed the church and disgraced the church at the time. Of course, it still stands, but it was disgrace. Philology. Philology. So it is important to study languages, to know your language, so that you can express yourself without hesitation, so that people who know it can listen to you. Now, this is a degree program, and all those who are doing diploma will be doing it too, and those who are doing certificate will be doing the same thing. But the certificate person will not do as much English as the degree person. Don't train yourself or satisfy yourself just to speak to market people. And I'm not being rude. But don't tell yourself that it is okay just to speak the languages of those who sell in the market and those who push hand cards. Fine, you'll have to deal with them. They need to hear about Jesus. But you must put yourself in a position to know. Know the English language so that you can go to the University of the West Indies and speak to the professors here. The Apostle Paul spoke to the professors at the University of Athens. There's a place for it. And yet he could speak to ordinary people. When you are up here, it is easy to reach down to ordinary people. When you're down here, you will not reach the people up here. The intelligentsia, they are not going to listen to you. They are not going to appreciate it. John Spurgeon, an Englishman and a great man of God, makes mention in his book of experiences he had on the field. He was pastoring in this church, and he said that there was this lady in the audience who every Sunday would write his mistakes and give the mistakes to him. She would write them down. She was there listening, but she would write down the mistakes, his grammatical mistakes, and give them to him. She wanted him to correct himself. And listen, learn from people who know. If you have people in your audience, and you're going to have people in your audience who more educated than you are, but make sure that you educate yourself, But you will have people who are more educated than you are. You'll have people and even if they're not members of a church, they might be visiting a church. It might be a funeral, it might be a wedding. I have had the experience of being at this funeral, and I could cite several instances, but I remember this particular funeral. The mother of a member of parliament had died, and that pulled a lot of upscale people to the funeral. There were ordinary people as well, but a lot of upscale people, for people from the ministry, for the son of this woman is a politician, but he was also a minister of government, and he pulled people from the University of the West Indies and the politicians and so on. He pulled a good crowd. The pastor of the church was the moderator. Just that he was doing. And people, the little comments he was able to make in between, people took note that he wasn't sounding good. Person was saying, but listen to that. And he's the pastor of this church. They are not going to come to your church if that is how you are. They're not going to come. And you will not get invited to speak at a convention, a big convention, or a Keswick convention, or, and university, and places like those. The Apostle Paul could meet people on any occasion, at every level. He spoke to kings and emperors. King Agrippa, and other political leaders who were highly educated. He spoke to the professors at Athens, And remember that it is not everything is recorded. Listen, the Bible was written by 40 something persons. Only two of them, two Bible writers, were not educated. Only two. Improve yourself, learn the language, learn the other courses, learn the lesson, do well. When we come back, we're going to be looking at nouns. This is just a background to the English language and to motivate you and to tell you that you can learn. There was a time when I did not know the difference between Danjoff and Danjus. I would say Danjus when it was Danjoff. I didn't know the difference between jogs and dregs. But I learned painfully, learned the hard way. And I wanted to learn the nice way. God bless you.